If Ken Wheeler gets intro music, I get intro music. All right, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. We're definitely going to talk a lot about React Native. We're going to talk about some fun stuff, some not so fun stuff. I might talk about some parts of technology that you're all like, oh, I don't care about that. But if you're passionate about the same stuff, then I do have a challenge for you at the end if you're interested in other technology. But before I really start this, I have to say I go to a lot of conferences, but this one stands out in a few ways. The people are extremely nice. And the other thing that's really important to me is that there's so many volunteers, and I found out the volunteers, some of them are taking vacation to help everybody today. So I'd like all of you to stand up, and the organizers and the volunteers, let's give them a round of applause. Come on, give them a little bit. They've done a wonderful job. Dumbledore's pleased. Okay. So, oh, good. Is that how my internet's going? Good. Let's all have fun. Specifically, one of the things that are going to happen here is I like a lot of stock photography. We have a stock photography Slack where we put the dumbest things we can find on the internet. So I like to take those and move them into my presentations. So who is this guy? Every presentation needs to say why you're listening to them. Specifically, I've been doing coding for coming up to 20 years. I've been doing a lot of mobile development and a lot of JavaScript. JavaScript a long time ago, and very different from JavaScript today. And I've published a book, and I'm in the top 100 React Native contributors, but I think all those were spelling errors, so I just fixed it with that. If you're wondering what I'm looking at in this photo, it's usually my GitHub. I'm looking at the unicorn off in the distance. He couldn't come today. Customs didn't let it happen. So if you're looking for my name, if you want some credibility just about how fantastic JavaScript is, this is actually my name in JavaScript. Believe it or not, I am not lying to you. You put that in Node, my name comes out, which actually begs the question, you know. It's a little bit difficult at sometimes, and JavaScript's got some ugly parts to it that we're all working to resolve. Reasons you should listen to me on that is I've used this and these tools to deliver quite a lot of apps. We deliver apps all the time. I work for a consulting company, and reasons you shouldn't listen to me again, I like to build things that are completely useless as well, bringing to React Native the rainbow tag, the Trump sort, which just eliminates the ones it doesn't want, and the blink tag, which should have never gone away. I get to run around and travel, and I speak at these conferences, and it's really great. The people at Infinite Red allow me to go to as many conferences as I like, and I get to speak. So if you take any photos and you tweet it at us, it makes the bosses happy, it makes everybody cool. So there's not only the company, but the company's Twitter handle. So let's talk about React Native, right? And the first thing I need to do is, I had this problem when I was teaching the workshop. People are all over the place. They've built Hello World, or they've never even done React and they're here. So I need to know, raise your hand if you know React Native, if you've done some React Native. Nice. Okay, good. Now raise your hand if you're React. Okay. Raise your hand if you're JavaScript. And I assume everybody else with their hands down just realized they went to the wrong conference, right? Perfect. All right. Interesting thing here is I did JavaScript, then I went to mobile development, now I'm doing mobile development with JavaScript. So there was this really weird moment when there's an app for it kind of days when people thought that all you did was print money. They thought that every time you built an app and you put it on the App Store, you just made tons and tons of money. So this is what people thought that I did, and they weren't far off. Because here's some of my coworkers. That's them coding. That's some Swift. Here's Becky. She's on her way to Whole Foods, which costs a lot. And I highly recommend you Google people holding money and smiling and laughing. These are great. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of day you're having. When that lady's looking at it like that, you're in a good mood. So when I was doing native development, at the time, web development wasn't very technical, and people thought it was really, really, really complicated. But in all actuality, I sat around for the longest time reading these disgusting documents and watching things compile, and I didn't actually get real development time. And it kind of works out okay because, I was working for a consultancy, so we were hourly. But at the same time, I didn't feel fulfilled as a developer during that. And here's another problem that started to creep up. I'm just going over the history of what happens here. There used to have to be all the iPhone apps were out there, and then all of a sudden you needed to have an Android app as well. And so if you look at the salary for an Android developer and an iOS developer, and they looked pretty good in the States. So I figured you just add those two salaries together, because I'm delivering both those apps for people, right? But ultimately what ended up happening is this. Somebody told me this is just a picture of an average Finnish guy. I don't get that joke. And then ultimately at the end of it, there's too much to keep up with. There's too many different things out there. Any native developer is going to tell you, you have to do native. Just the same way that the C developers were shunned by assembly and C++ by C and Java by them. Now here we are in the JavaScript world, and there's going to be a bunch of people telling you, no, you have to get down and get your hands dirty. And I agree with them, but not all the time, right? You don't need to go out and work in the garden. There was a promised land that needed to happen, and there's a lot of people who were trying to give us this freedom, and we were just stuck in this world where we couldn't get out of it, but we wanted to be out there flying and running and having fun. And then there's all these tools, so like PhoneGap and RubyMotion and Xamarin, and you're just like, okay, well, give me these options, but we know this in JavaScript. We have JavaScript fatigue. How am I going to figure out all these things and then be able to come back together to find out which one I want to use? So I worked with a team, and we needed to figure out how we were going to deliver apps on two platforms. And at the time, we chose Ruby with RubyMotion. And we wrote some awesome libraries. We loved doing open source, and it worked great because we entered in a hackathon, which was a one-day hackathon to build a comedic app. And this is kind of that moment. When you're in a hackathon, you're like, what's going to happen? Is it going to even compile? Am I going to hate myself at the end of this? And what ended up happening was we won first, second, and fourth place in the contest. Because we entered so many because we had just used some tool that really helped us out. And that's the feeling that we all really want when we program. We're not sitting there looking at bits all the time. We want to feel excited. And so I said, how can we make this better? And at the time, RubyMotion only did iOS. So we said, hey, how are we going to do this on Android? It goes to show that RubyMotion didn't work too well on Android. So we had to figure out everything all over again. And it's around that time that we really invested in React Native. And I think that was the smartest, best decisions that we ever did. And it sort of sounds like, well, great, you invested then, so it was smart then, right? But that's the same feeling that said to everybody when Bitcoin was, $12, and you invested it in that, and then it went up to $30, and then the other person's like, well, you doubled your money. That's the end of that train. That's never going to happen again. And the trick is that I dare say that a large portion of my talk is that you have to go out and you have to invest. Any kind of time that you have locked up is not helping you. And with React Native, there was all these documentations, and there was all this friendliness. How many of you know about the ACM or ACM members? They have a magazine, and they published an article, which is really weird because it's like they're talking about React Native. They're talking about Facebook. It comes out of nowhere. It says, hey, this is important now. And so I did a blog post where I was trying to figure it out. I was like, is this really real? Can we do Android on this? And in the blog post, I'm saving, and I'm watching it actually update. And I'm seeing that these two applications, I'm writing the same code, and I'm seeing it in two places, which is fantastic. It looks great. So let's start our first app. And then what? Building an app in React Native was very difficult, but there had to be a better way. So we did exactly what we normally do. We asked, why is there a problem? There's too much to start with. We need opinions. I think that it's not a bad idea to have opinions. And so we invented a library. A lot of you heard about it, especially from the talk before, but maybe you've heard about this in some other time. It sounds like, oh, this is Gant. And I got a lot of credit in the last talk, but I don't deserve it. Because all I wanted to do was get that feeling back. And a lot of other people showed up with that same desire, and that's where Ignite came from. Now, you may have heard that putting some best practices forward, I know there's a talk recently talking about best practices and whether or not that's okay. But I feel very strongly about it's just my opinion. And that's all any best practice is. It's just a bunch of set of opinions. It's just a set of theories. There's a really good saying that says, the difficulty is, we suffer the difficulty not because we dare, but because we dare not suffer the difficulty, right? And so I think that we need to put ourselves out there. And bigger isn't better, right? It could be good for you, but that's not good for everybody. So what makes our opinions worth something? Well, we use it, right? We've shipped apps, okay? If you're using React Native, maybe that means something to you. Maybe it doesn't. If you're using React, then hey, you know that at least that this will get you all the way to the end. And you might notice I don't even know what that last icon is, but we have that. But truth of the matter is, yes, we have written and shipped Windows apps for clients using React Native. And this is my favorite Windows error. Something happened, close. So what's in the box with React Native, with Ignite? This is a little different in a few ways because, so that's not in the box. Sorry about that. One of the things we're trying to figure out is we've learned waterfall doesn't work, right? You can't catapult to the top of the mountain, you have to climb it. Right? So we want to give you a way to make composable pieces so that you can figure out what's going on. And that's what I'm talking about is we built an infrastructure that allowed you to have plugins so that you could say, hey, I wanted to add internationalization to my app. And then that will go out, look for the plugin, which we've seen is sort of like where CLIs go. Like you have to have plugins now. And then you end up getting internationalization added to your application. And it does those steps for you. And that's not specific to how we do it. It's not a secret formula. It's actually really easy, right? Creating a plugin can be as simple as creating a new plugin with the command and then just doing a few commands right there. So it's really short. And then I know you can't read this, but that one page is a plugin. That's it. That's a plugin for something that you want to be able to add dynamically to your app later on. And if you wanted to say, hey, we want to do this, there's add and remove, install and uninstall. And the concept of this is like, we want to give that, hey, could you help me experience, not just to you, but we're a 100% remote company. So I can't go over somebody's shoulder and say, hey, how you doing today? Oh, sure, I'll add maps to your stuff, and you sit on the side, watch me do it, and then I say, here, it's done, and I put some examples, and everything's set for you. What's different about this is that we want to give that to everybody else. We want to be able to import code, provide examples, provide generators, and it's not specific to just us. So as an example, you might have seen this talk before where I live coded this example. And it's a fantastic opportunity to see how fast you can actually code with this stuff. I have a friend of mine, Mark Rickert, who built this app. He actually let it go out of the App Store, so I guess I should just rebuild it and put it back up there. But he sold this for 99 cents, and he sold 28,000 copies. And it's a silly copy and paste app of ASCII art. It was really fun. And so what I decided to do is say, hey, let me go ahead and build that app. So I did it in a couple of conferences, but for here, I just want to say, like, when you get the slides, if you want to see exactly how to build that same app, I have a video that just tells you how to do exactly that in under 15 minutes, and then you can put it on the App Store, and you can have 99 cents. So all of his original code was open source. Thanks to Mark for having the open source code. So I can't show too many things because a lot of the clients that we have, I can't show any of their code, and I can't show all of their apps. But a lot of people write in and say, please tell everybody that we built our app using that CLI, using your boilerplate, using another boilerplate, but using your CLI, right? And they've written in some very nice comments. And these are the things that make you feel good. I had even people say, hey, do you want to be in the beta? I'm like, yes, send me the beta. I will crash the hell out of your app for you. I will mash the buttons all day. And then here's another one that was sent to us from Tiller Systems. They built the entire thing on Ignite. Now, we all know this happened, right? Kitsa recently said, do not make native apps for conferences, right? And he's so happy right there, isn't he? And so it really warms my heart that at this conference, the app was written in Ignite as well, and that there's a Medium blog post, and that it's open source. Because I say that if you're talking about React, go ahead and build the website in React. If you want to, build the app in React as well, in React Native. And another conference app was built with that. And also, we throw a conference in the States, and we built the app for that as well. And all that source is open and available, and all the bells and whistles. I also have videos showing how to debug these things and kind of showing you a little bit more. So, yeah. By the way, Kits is a really cool guy. It hurt me just to go ahead and make this photo. So, like I said, there's plenty more videos available for you as well. So, a lot of you know a lot about that. Some of you just learned about Ignite, but some people have been coming to us saying, hey, like just the app here, they went ahead and wrapped the whole thing in GraphQL, right? And the boilerplate that we have puts you into Redux. And there's a lot of other options out there. If anything, the options are starting to really kind of spread out there. So I would like to present, check this out. What? The next boilerplate for us. I'm going to play that again. That's awesome. Hold on. Yeah. All right. So we decided to name all of our stuff in alphabetical order from A to Z, and we decided video game villains. So the current one was Andros from Firefox. Not Star Fox, right? And then our second one here is Bowser. So it's set up. So it shows you specifically, you have an app set here, and when you launch with this, it's available. Now, as of right now, launched specifically for you all here, so if you typed Ignite new some app, it will pop up with a new option here. It'll say, do you want the original boilerplate, which has React Navigation, Redux, Redux Saga, or do you want to go ahead and use Bowser? And we've made some choices in this one that are different. And I'd like to go over the differences and the choices that we made and why we made them. And I think these reflect and echo throughout the community and how things have changed, because this is the latest and greatest that we think we should be using when we build apps. So here's a bit of what we've decided here. First off, Storybook, right? How many of you are using Storybook? It's really good. It's really, really good. If you're not using Storybook, Demo Friday at every job is you have to show what's going on. Storybook is the perfect way for you to keep your components in a way that you can present them while you're still building your application. It's like a pattern library, and it sets you up to keep it outside of your app. So when you do a brand new app here, what you get here is Storybook's turned on, and you can use it. Now, one of the things that's normal for Storybook is that it's got one component per page. And I think that that's a little bit wasteful sometimes when you're doing React Native, you kind of need to see all the demos of what's going on. So it identifies, you can see here we have a specific text component that's hooked up to internationalization automatically. Internationalization and accessibility in every app. It's not a plugin, it should be there for everybody. And then when you click here, you can take a look at all the different cool features. And it's great because all the demos are all on one page of Storybook. We do that a little bit different than it is when you first install it. So you can take a look at buttons. We threw a few other things in there, a switch perhaps, and then you can see what they look like as a managed state component. So you can see how we're having these things look right there and whether or not you can edit them. So Storybook is a fantastic feature. We ship with that immediately. And we simply have a switch right now where you can turn Storybook true or false. And so if you say it to false, save, come over here, grab it again, then it goes back to what you would have gotten for the main app, right? And we have a feature coming in where it'll be really cool to kind of turn on and off Storybook directly from Reactor Tron, but didn't have it in time for this, right? What's another thing that we're doing is Typescript. Okay. I know that some people who are like, look, man, I live free. I'm not going to use Typescript. That's okay. You can easily turn on allow.js next to Typescript and then ignore the hell out of it. That's why we went with Typescript. That's why we loved it. You can turn it as difficult or as on as you want it to be. You can turn on strict null checks and such. But here's the main reason why we had to do Typescript. And I want to show you this, right? So it's the flow control built into VS Code. How many of you are using VS Code? Yeah, it's catching on a lot. And then when you've got an editor that actually works with you, so you can see here I have a command that's either a string or a string array, right? And the first thing I'm going to do here is comment this here. And if you take a look, it knows by the flow that right there, that has to be a string because I'm calling two lowercase on it. Well, isn't that nice, right? At that moment, I have this sort of mouse over ability. Rodham said like he comes from a place where all of his code is compiled, and he really likes the checking and the notifications that come out of that. And I think like we can have all that right now. And so take a look at this. Now here I am initializing an array, and then it knows it's an array. It's the same command that's up here. And it can tell that here it's a string, and here it's set as an array. And if I were to bring this in, you say type of command here, this would be never, and this would be a string, because it's set here. It says, look, there's no way that you could ever get here and know it's a string. And that's really, really nice. And here's another thing that protects us, right? This is another reason we had to go with this. So let's say I have, we've shipped apps, and we've seen the same problem over and over again. And what it really is on screen 17, somebody gets in a specific state, and they hit some line of code that you swore that you had tested, but then it actually crashes the app, right? And the simplest things, JavaScript will let you shoot yourself in the foot and then reload the gun for you and point it back at your foot and get you ready again. And if you take a look here, I have a function that will return 50, right? And I say, hey, let's go ahead and return 50. So what will be less than 100, which is fine. Did you know that if you just pass in the function, you forgot your parentheses, this JavaScript will run, and it will manifest as forever being false? Because for some reason, we can compare a function against a number, and then JavaScript says, all good here, that's false. Don't worry about this. Your code's working just fine. It'll never be true, but you're okay. But you see, the second I made the mistake here, I got a red underline. And that red underline right there translates to right now in front of you all, like, what the hell is going on here? Oh, you can't do that on a function that wants a number. Oh, yeah, okay, I understand that. 20, 30 seconds, right? But if you ship the app with that bug in it, that is days and thousands of dollars that come out of either the client's pocket or your pocket, depending on if they're actually finding the bugs or you're finding the bugs, right? It's a really difficult problem to have. And one of the things that's been a theme here is specifically like, start doing type checking, right? Flow, we used Flow, we tried it. I know it comes de facto, you're set up for it. It's let a few things go, and it's very, very specific. Typescript, we can use as much or as little bit as we want, and I'm really excited because the same features that make me very excited about TypeScript are also in Reason, right? So you can actually check. You saw the never. It knows that this is never going to get there, and that you should be able to check against those things. So I like these features, and I just want to do a quick quiz, because JavaScript's, just like I wrote my name in, it's kind of complicated here. So if I have a thing that's a string array, null or undefined, and I say if thing, we always do this, it's truthiness, right? Does anybody want to guess what this first thing is on line 3? What could that possibly be? Well, if I mouse over it, I find out immediately. It's either a string or a string array. Now, I've identified as string array, null or undefined, right? So that means what is in else? Anybody want to tell me what's in else? What is it? There you go. String, null, and undefined. Yeah, you wouldn't have guessed that, and I constantly forget about empty string, right? But here it is telling me immediately. So I have that mistake caught right away. Type of thing is equal to an object here, and you get string or null. And I did triple equals, and here you get string or undefined. But let's say somebody made a mistake and did double equals, right? It can happen unless your linter's forcing all triple equals. But the moment you see it here, this is why. This is null or undefined. And then this one is, let's see here. This one's string, array, or null. And this one could be null or undefined for the first part. And so, actually, no, I'm sorry. I was doing that part wrong. But the double equals, you would expect that if you're checking if it's undefined, you wouldn't be able to get it through to here. I don't know. I wrote this when I was really tired. Okay, I get one pass, right? So it makes sense. So that's why we brought in TypeScript, right? I can actually see it right now, live in front of everybody. What exactly is happening? I can see my code, and the second I type it, I can see the mistake. All right. What else did we bring in? Solidarity. So I could spend an entire talk about solidarity, but React Native is a bunch of tools. It's a ton of tools, and some of the React apps are a large array of command lines and tools as well. And so one of the difficulties that we have with this is that if we're looking at it, I will be able to run on my machine, and then we have this in workshops all the time. One person can't run the same exact project. And then what happens? I have to walk around. I have to say, let's see what the error is over here. And it's some cryptic thing. And because I've done enough workshops, I know that they have an old version of Xcode installed or something like that. But that takes a lot of time. And you can imagine how that works with clients when they're meeting you on a Saturday saying, your stuff didn't run. And you're like, nope, works on my machine. Sounds like a you problem. Can't do that as a consultancy, right? So the other thing we have here is if I type solidarity, it's actually doing the checks. So we build this into every app that you have coming out of it. And then it does all the checks to make sure you're set for React Native. I can go into a lot more detail about solidarity as a tool. I think you should definitely use it because I wrote it. And so it's checking all the pieces that are essential for I identify what those things are. And later on, if I need to report it, I could say solidarity report. So my teammates and I can identify to one another exactly what's going on each other's machine in a markdown language. So if you copy and paste this into GitHub, it will use that and build tables out of it, which is really nice. So we can actually communicate why it's not working on one machine or another. I know a lot of people are saying right now, just use Docker, okay? But in open source, you can't say that all the time. And for clients, you really can't say that all the time. This gives us the ability to be a little bit lighter on the touch and just saying, look, you're not good to go. Go spend some more time setting it up. What other things did we put in here? MobX state tree, all right? That's specifically because I lost a bet to Michelle, so we didn't actually decide to have that in there. We put it in there. But one of the great things about MobX state tree, I want to show you this. Many of you, how many of you know what Reactor Tron is? Right? Yeah. So in debugging native apps, it gets a little complicated sometimes. So we have this tool called Reactor Tron. Can everybody see that just fine? And this tool is friendly for us, and we had it wired in with Redux perfectly, and we loved watching state. I know everybody loves their own state management, and it's really hard to support them all, but when there is an actual tree, you can get a lot of information from looking at that tree, and that's what we got out of Redux that really made us happy. But if you take a look, now we've switched over to MobX state tree, which is like, to me, MobX and Redux had a baby, and it turned out to be this wonderful, wonderful thing. So here we are looking at the app, and if I say continue here, you can see the actions. It's wired up through React Navigation to the store, and you can see I'm seeing those events in real time here inside of Reactor Tron. Let's see if I can actually make that a little bit bigger. There we go. So I'm looking here inside of Reactor Tron. I can see those navigation events, and you can see that we're actually setting those in there. So when I come over here and I Command R on the side of the app, it's managing the state of where I am in navigation. So as I'm refreshing, it's staying on that screen. We've wired all these things up. We've wired it up to Reactor Tron. And Reactor Tron does all kinds of neat features when you've wired it up. And I want to show you specifically. I have a demo Reactor Tron button that comes out of it. You can see first and foremost, here's a console.tron.log. It will go to Reactor Tron and let you know, hey, here's a friendly log. Here's one set as important, so it gets a nice little orange flag on it. And then you have a console.tron.display. We've always had this. It's amazing. Then you get to click it, and why the shit did we do that? I don't know. We just wanted to go ahead and put an image in there if you chose to. So you can actually grab images and have them output to this totally separate tool. And for those of you who know React Native, I want to show you this. If you take a look, I'm not debugging JS remotely, right? I'm not slowing us down if this goes into the background like the same problems we have with Chrome debugger. This is specifically being wired up, placed inside of the app load up, and it's passing it through. And then here's another thing that you can see, async storage that we set up on there. So if you're storing something to the phone and retrieving it back, you can see all of those events coming straight to you. And then another thing that you have here is API responses, right? Those of us working with people where we still have to work with RESTful APIs and we don't get to place GraphQL in front of everything and have fun all day with that, we have to actually look at all the API. And if you take a look here, you can look at the response, the headers, the request headers. Setting up Reactor Tron takes a lot of time and energy. It does. You have to basically wire all these things in. So when you create a brand new app with Bowser, all that's wired up for you. Okay? So you don't have to worry about setting all of these things up. These are part of the things that kind of come out of it right away. A little more on the demo here. If I type here, I could be searching, so I can look at just the async storage items. I can filter. I can delete. And then I don't know if you've seen this, but this is one of my favorite things. I can take a snapshot of the state tree, and that's always fun. And then I can go back to the first screen. And then when I click on my snapshot, it will load that tree, and you watch the navigation went back to it. So you can actually store different states of your app. So if you're demoing your app and you're demoing the live app, not just components inside of Storybook, you can actually move around in different states of the app that are difficult to get to, like login and setup. You can actually put your app into certain states. And we also have a feature where you can send commands directly into the app. You can set up whatever these are, and it'll run whatever code that you want it to run. So those are interesting as well. And if you are using Redux, you can always dispatch actions, right? If you're going back to the Redux setup, so if you want to dispatch anything. This is, and all of this, just to kind of remind, this is the kind of stuff that we work on as a team. It's all open source, and it's all free, and we love issues. It is open source, so sometimes our comment is, please, you fix it for us, or you kind of work with it, but we fix any major bugs that work with this. This is what we maintain. And then more Reactor Tron, which we just took a good look at, and you got to see it working with MobX State Tree. Another reason I want to say about MobX State Tree that's really interesting is we did some back-of-the-napkin math. We actually, with MobX State Tree, we were able to take our Redux code and deliver the same thing at 35% less code, and with the same features of like, now, how do you handle the side effects of reducers? Like, that's all handled inside there. It's a prescribed method that goes with all that, so it kind of helps with the arguing between these things. Oh, yeah, one more thing. You might have seen this talk recently, right? And talking about lint staged. Well, of course, yeah, we put that in there as well. So you will get that as well. So the Ignite ecosystem, the way it works, if you want to write a plugin, we can't limit you. It's just like the other system, it's namespaced. So if you grab the name, then that's your plugin. It doesn't matter. We don't manage any of that stuff. Each project can have its own customizations. And here's the interesting part. Use your own boilerplate. And this is the big part that I want to really kind of mention here. Like Geeky Ants went ahead and did their own because they have their own setup, so they wanted to have their own boilerplate that works specifically. And there's a lot of people who have actually done boilerplates. So we did a certain kind of code in 2016. We did a certain kind of code for Andros, and we are now doing a new set of code for Bowser. But we're still outnumbered by other people who are using their own boilerplates and their own kinds of style of code. And I'd say, like, yeah, our best practices might not be your best practices, right? And one of the things that we're trying to do is we're documenting our best practices. We're trying to identify what those are, so that way if you want to follow along with us, we're going to do videos and we're going to do documents. But, and also, we're going to do another conference app. Sorry. So this actually comes to a major question for you. What are you going to do? Like, you don't have to like what we're saying. You don't have to like what we're doing. We built the tool in a way where if you want to use Reason, I want to see a Reason boilerplate. I want to see it. And there's no reason to rewrite the Ignite code, but if you want to get listed as one of the options in that dropdown, I have no problem if you promise that you're going to keep up with it, right? And I'll put you in there, and then you can write any boilerplate you want. A GraphQL boilerplate, right? Well, I think there's a conference that recently used Ignite that went and switched to GraphQL. So I think it's an opportunity for certain people to be able to give back to the community. If you learned exactly how to take that code and put it in a feasible way that can start someone else off, right? If you got started off and you were kicking butt in one day, that's your chance. Now you have to pay it forward. You have to help the next person be able to start in one day. So we would love to write a GraphQL boilerplate. Maybe we will. I'm definitely writing all kinds of cool stuff. I have example code if you want to talk to me about AppSync and MobX State Tree and context and just set state and screw all those things. I will talk to you about all of those, and I have lots of code to show you. But the real part of it is I can't write all those boilerplates. We can't write all those boilerplates. We have how we are delivering apps at Infinite Red, right? And a large part of that is to all these fantastic people who help out. It looks good because of these designers who show up and they do the cool Bowser icons, they do all the fun stuff. Steve is a wizard, right? He is amazing. He has architected the entire aspect of Bowser. And all the decisions in there have been formed from him talking to so many people on the team, and we've shipped, I think, 6 apps with Bowser, and so we're kind of late to giving it to everybody, and I apologize for that. And Kevin is definitely showing up and helping us all the time as well. He's a fantastic ad. He's in the community. You'll see him often. So if you've not done React Native, or if you're not getting enough React Native, there's the React Native newsletter. So you should definitely go to the React Native newsletter, sign up. We send out 2 emails every month. And the fun thing is, if you say, screw those guys, I'm going to Facebook and signing up for the React Native newsletter, well, you come to us anyway. We're the people managing that as well. If you just want to take a look at a bunch of code, sure. We also help out with kind of showing a bunch of React Native apps. So there's the React Native apps, which you can go there. And if you write an app in React Native and you are willing to give it the source code out, then you can get listed on there. It's like a awesome React Native open source list. Conferences, of course, I'll be at React Native EU, which is coming up. I highly recommend that you go there. CallStack will be throwing that, and it's amazing. I will also be at React Alicante. If you see me there, please talk to me. And then, of course, Infinite Red throws the conference over in the States. I know it's a long flight. This is my second flight to Europe this month. So I would say definitely come visit us if you're interested in learning more about React Native. And we generated a discount code, Finland CR18. So that'll give you some amount of money off the ticket should you want to. I didn't create it. I just asked them to make it. So let me know how much that percentage off is. And then if you want to learn more, I say join. We have a community Slack, which is a lot of fun. The community Slack is a Slack channel with a lot of the people here have also been in that. Read Medium blog posts. I'm constantly trying to share this message. And then come talk to me, right? I love talking to people at conferences. I'm actually kind of sad I'm one of the last talks because you don't have that much time, so hopefully we'll be able to chat a lot tonight. The people at Infinite Red, of course, the founders taking care of the company. So in summation, if you haven't used React Native, it's easy. If you want to give Ignite a try, tweet me and my bosses, right? Read about us on Medium, go to React Native CC newsletter, join the community. I have to say thank you. Like I said, I'm not the person who makes Ignite. It has over 7,700 stars on GitHub. It has over 87 contributors. And we get a lot of feedback and a lot of help from a lot of people because it's really important to me that they get their due share of the credit on that. And with that, thank you very much, Finland.